Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 19 of Great Guitar Build Off 2023, and in this episode we're going to continue at the headstock end by fitting the tuners and making a start on the mother of pearl inlay. So we got all the binding onto the headstock in the last episode and I'm really pleased with the way that's come out. But we're not finished yet. We've still got quite a bit of work to do up here before we're ready to progress. Some that's essential and some is stuff that I want to do just to make it look nicer. The essential job is fitting the tuners. So I've got these kind of 6 in a line. They're chrome, they've got like a tulip effect tuner button on them, which I think looks quite nice. And of course, they're left-handed because we're installing them upside down. And they need to be positioned in a line along the bottom edge of the headstock here. And I also want to put one of my fancy mother of pearl logos into the headstock. The problem we got though is that the mother of pearl against this maple probably isn't going to stand out that much. So to make sure that we can see it and our work isn't in vain, I've also got this little thin bit of wenge, and I'm going to design a little patch that's going to sit in the top end of here, and we'll inlay piece of wenge in there, and then the mother of pearl will be inlaid into the wenge. So it's quite a lot of work there, quite complicated, but I think it will actually look really nice. But that's for a little while later on. The first thing we need to do is to get these tuners installed, and it should be quite a straightforward job really. All I'm going to do is I'm going to make a line 1/2 inch in from the edge of the fretboard, running parallel to it. Like that. Now, I've done a bit of measuring up on the actual Firebird that I built, and I've worked out that if I make a line between those 2 points with a bit of masking tape, I apologise in advance, I'm going to mix my measurements. I've just done 1/2 inch. But this time I'm going to do 10 mil. That will give me the start point of my tuners. I've measured again, and the distance between all 6 tuners is 131 mil, which means if I set my dividers up to a fraction over 26 mil, I'm going to bust out the calculator just to double check this. Yeah, 26.2 mil. What I'm going to do is I'm going to step out 2 from one end and 2 from the other. That's pretty close. That is almost exactly there. It's probably about 0.1 of a mil out, so really nothing worth worrying about. And then I'm just going to take my awl and just make those a little bit bigger. And we can get this over to the drill press. Now these tuners actually have a little screw-in bush there, so they need to be drilled out effectively 2 different sizes. I could just drill them out 10 mil, which is the dimension for this bigger one, all the way through, but I prefer to do 10 mil at the bottom to accommodate this bit, and these are usually 8 mil. Yeah. I just prefer to do it that way. I don't know, might be my OCD. I just feel that they locate better. But to make sure that I can do that accurately, the first thing I'm going to do is I'll probably put a 2.5 or a 3 mil drill bit right the way through and use those as pilot holes to locate the brad of my brad point bit, so I can then do the other drilling. Okay, so time to get these screwed on now. I've lined them all up with a rule and they look absolutely spot on. What I'll do is I'll kind of start one end and just make sure that they're lining up as best as they can as we work our way through. I've just got a 1.5mm drill bit, the little tape flag on, so I don't drill all the way through because that would be horrible. And I'm just going to work my way through them. Now, I always say this, and hopefully people listen, these screws are tiny and they're not always the best quality. So always put a little bit of wax or something on those threads just to lubricate them on their way in, because just one of these snapping, it might not ruin your whole day, but it's definitely not going to improve it. And this is just candle wax. I'll make a little mould out of some plastic covered board, and I just melt a candle down in a tin can and pour it in. I'm just trying to be fancy really. Could just use a candle. I suppose the other thing you need to remember is that all these screws are doing is stopping this from spinning. The nut on the other side is actually doing most of the work in holding this onto your headstock, so these don't need to be cranked down super tight. So together with the wax and the not being too tight bit, hopefully we won't break any. Okay, so next up I want to start having a look at this headstock logo design. And as I said, what I want to do is inlay a little piece of this wenge. It's probably about 3mm thick, so it's an ideal thickness for this job. And I need to kind of design a plaque shape that's going to work in the context of this headstock and the rest of the guitar, and also my little logo. And to that end, I've got a little bit of paper that's kind of almost sort of the right shape for my logo, which I'm going to kind of position somewhere about there. And to make this easier for myself, I'm actually going to put some, for once, normal coloured masking tape on, because I want to be able to see what I'm doing. Now, my initial thoughts are that I want to follow the kind of outline of the headstock to a certain extent, but immediately that's dropping my logo a little bit too far down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in place roughly where I want it, somewhere like that. Doesn't look to be in the right angle, but we're not doing this for real just yet. And I think what I might actually do is just take that line a little bit deeper. And I don't know how well you can see that. I think that's going to look kind of all right. Okay, so I've cut that out on the bandsaw and absolutely hate it. I just don't think it really works very well. Doesn't really follow the shape of anything very well, either the headstock or the little logo. So what I've done is I've had another go at sketching it, and I've done something that is more indicative of the shape of the headstock. I'm still not sure about this little pointy bit which replicates this. I'll have another think about that. It does look a little bit phallic as well, so I might just want to amend that a little bit, but I'm pretty sure once we get our logo installed in the middle, your eye will go to that shape rather than the shape of anything else. So I'm going to cut that out of a bit of wenge and just see what I think of it then. And after much faffing about and filing, I've ended up with this shape, which is a little bit more complex than I was kind of envisaging when I first thought of this, but in the context of our logo, I actually think it works very well. The beauty of this is, of course, I can size this logo to fit in exactly how I want it to. So next up, we need to dispense with that for the time being, and we need to position and inlay this bit of wenge exactly where we want it. And I want it to run kind of parallel to this top edge. I'll set my calipers up, and of course it's got to be super glue and masking tape, right? And I'm not going to use accelerator on this because I want the open time to get it into the right position. Which looks to be out there, and that looks about right. So I'm going to get a brand new scalpel blade in. And we can start the inlaying process by just delicately cutting in with the scalpel. And if you notice, I'm going in at a bit of an angle, so it's actually kind of undercutting this ever so slightly, which will mean the cavity that we're producing will probably be a little bit too small, but that's okay because we would then have the opportunity to go back in and kind of enlarge it as necessary. Okay, so I've cut all the way around that now. I'm going to very gently try and get this off. Like that. Get the masking tape off. You might just be able to make out the outline of that. And what I'm just going to do is go back in with the scalpel and just kind of make sure that everything's been joined up properly, and also that I've cut in a good deep way. Now your initial passes need to be quite light and shallow, but as you kind of progress you can put a bit more pressure on and go a bit deeper. Okay, so I think that's cut deep enough now. So next up, I'll bring you in a little bit closer and we need to get a chisel on the job and start relieving around these edges. Okay, so I've been around this a few times now, just kind of working my way down at an angle all the way around, and I think I'm somewhere near the depth I need to be, and I just need to clear out the rest of this central section, which is kind of forming a bit of a hump at the moment, and I'm going to do that just with my tiny little router plane, and literally working from one end and then the other just kind of very slowly just work that material down. Just being careful not to take too much, not to get too close to the edges. Okay, and there's that little cutout all done. I'm not entirely sure I've gone down far enough, but there's no immediate rush to do that. The main thing is that that little piece of Wenge fits in there quite nicely. It's nice and snug, and there's no real gaps around the edge, which is exactly what we wanted. Next up, I need to make the paper template for the mother of pearl logo, and I've got a really nice pearl blank that I can use to do this. But that's all going to be for the next episode. I'm going to leave this one here. So as always, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.